Bring the dream of flight to life at iFly Indoor Skydiving. iFly gives you the rush of flying without the stomach drop feeling. It's a one-of-a-kind experience for any occasion, from birthdays and anniversaries to staycations or milestones. Expert instructors guide you to float on a cushion of air so you can embrace the freedom of flight and create lasting highlight reel memories. Get the thrill of flight without the height. Go to iFlyWorld.com and use code TAKEFLIGHT for 20% off. That's iFlyWorld.com, code TAKEFLIGHT.
Hello and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm your host, Steven Toplis. It's Friday the 18th of October and that means it's time for another Friday 5. Forest will be back in Premier League action this weekend following another international break, and we're going to be bringing you the stories that have been making the news at the City Ground over the past 7 days. I'm joined once again by the Maradona of the Midlands. Welcome.
Thanks, Stephen.
Let's now hear the top Forest stories of the week. It's over to Rich Ferraro.
Hello, it's Rich here at the 1865 news desk for another week while Jamie tops up his tan. Here are the top stories from the City Ground in the last 7 days. And we start with a story that has driven many Red supporters a bit mad and brought more allegations of incompetence, Big Six bias and even corruption amongst the fan base. Chelsea forward Nicholas Jackson has escaped any kind of punishment for his slap in the face of Forest defender Morato in the recent Battle of Stamford Bridge, despite video evidence suggesting the crime. The VAR, Jared Gillett, saw the incident but did not suggest the on-pitch ref take any further action, and there was no retrospective punishment. However, both teams have been charged for failing to control their players, and just a few days later this was followed by the unprecedented fine of £750,000 for that tweet, which we debated at length in our Forest Ramble podcast earlier this week. Not for the first time this season, draw your own conclusions. Next, Forest have released a slick video showcasing the training ground, canteen, including that famous coffee machine, the gym and the physio room. Many fans were happy to see this production as it highlights the club's attempts to improve facilities for the men's, women's and academy players. Some conspiracy theorists had suggested that this was made in response to some provocative comments on a Forest fan's vidcast, and that drew a salty response from Miltiades Marinakis on social media. In reality, the timescales just don't add up for that, and despite a few dissenting voices, it is difficult to question the capital investment that the big guy has made into the club. Although there was no men's football, there was a big match for the women's team, as 2 late goals from Charlie Wellings, the latter was a stoppage time penalty, saw the Reds take all 3 points away at local rivals Derby County. If you haven't already, do check out our NFFC Women's show from this week, in which Adam and I discuss the game and the forthcoming fixtures. The club have also confirmed that the women's team will train using the improved facilities at Home Road Training Ground, but will, quote, continue to operate gym, analysis and all other off-pitch activities from the Nigel Doughty Academy, allowing the team to benefit from a shared methodology and innovation with the other staff and teams based there, whilst utilising the first-class facilities that the Academy provides. Back to the men's game. We all know that it has been International Week and 11 Reds were called up to represent their countries at various levels. Elliot Anderson scored for the England under-21s and Zach Abbott played for the under-19s. At senior level, Chris Wood scored again for New Zealand and crucially didn't get injured that we know of, while Nikola Milenkovic played for Serbia, but he did relinquish the captaincy to the returning Alexander Mitrovic. Meanwhile, Taiwo Awoniyi and Ola Aina were caught up in some drama as Nigeria decided not to play their fixture in Libya after their flight was diverted and the whole squad got locked into the airport terminal at Al Abrak Airport, nearly 200 miles and an arduous road trip away from where the game was due to be played. This led to allegations from the Super Eagles that the home team were basically trying to nobble the opposition, allegations which were strenuously denied. Oof. And last but not least, a few sundry stories, with the B team losing 1-0 to a late goal from Valencia under-21s in the Premier League International Cup, despite a spirited performance. Forest Netball have appointed Andrew Butterworth as Head of Performance and Performance Analysis. And finally, there have been fixture changes for the first team as the TV companies get their claws in. So games in December against Manchester City and United, Aston Villa and Spurs have all been selected to be on the box. There are also changes to the January matches against Wolves, Liverpool and Southampton. Those are your top 5 stories, and this has been Rich Ferraro at the 1865 News Desk. Thanks for listening, and now it's back to Steven and Maradona in the studio.
Thanks, Rich. So that's our top 5 Forest stories for the week. Let's now have a look at those in a bit more detail. And the first one is a story which continues to rumble on. It has come out this week that Chelsea forward Nicholas Jackson will not be punished for his antics in the game at Stamford Bridge a couple of weeks ago, where it appeared that he gave Morato a slap in the face and there was a bit of a brawl and both teams getting involved. And I can't say, to be honest, Maradona, that I'm all too surprised by this.
Yeah, I mean, on the face of it, I was a little bit surprised, but then I remembered that they've always had this rule of where if the officials have seen it and decided upon it on the day during the match, they don't go back to it retrospectively. That appears to be what's happened here. The VAR on the day said he saw it and didn't think it was worth reporting to the ref. It wasn't worth the card or anything, and so we're snookered. We're not allowed to. He's not allowed to be punished in any way, it seems. I've always thought it was a bit of a silly rule because players can get away with metaphorical murder, not literal murder. I think that would be pushing it on the pitch. But yeah, it's a pity because he deserved. If anything, he deserved a slap back really for that. I think they should maybe before a match just have him and Morato standing there in the centre circle and just allow Morato to just absolutely slap him in the face in front of everybody. And then we'll carry on. We'll get on with our lives. But justice would have been served. Everybody would have had a bit of pre-match entertainment, and the world can move on.
There you go. You heard it here first. New kind of pre-match entertainment for the return fixture. Yes, it does seem like a bit of an odd rule because it does allow players to get away with things and continue to get away with things. A little bit frustrating as when you look at some of the things that Forest have been pulled up for since they got back into the Premier League. Yeah, it doesn't stack up all that fair, to be honest. But we move on, and our next story is all about this new video that has been published by the club this week, and it's a video that showcases the latest improvements that have taken place at the Nigel Doughty Academy, the club's training ground. And it's quite an impressive production, a good 5 minutes long, that takes you through all the different areas of the ground. It's got an interview in there with Ryan Yates. It's got Nuno at the start, wishing you a very warm welcome to Forest. And what do you think, Maradona, of this new production and the new improvements to Forest's training ground now that we can see them properly?
Yeah, I mean, the video itself was very, very slick and swish, wasn't it? It was a real professional production. Just shows the in-house media team are working, are pushing up their levels just as the on-pitch team are. But yeah, for me, the highlights were seeing that we've got a barista now. Blimey. They've got some money to burn down there at the club, haven't they? Hire a full-time barista for a bunch of Premier League players. But we saw the coffee machine. Very nice, very fancy coffee machine. Lovely pool table, lovely sofas, really nice saunas, everything. I found myself wondering if it was available on Airbnb for a stay. It looks really nice. It'd be like a spa weekend, wouldn't it? Maybe when the team are away for an away match, maybe they could rent it out on the old Airbnb, and we could all have a little bit of a taste of the luxurious lifestyle. But yeah, I guess the biggest investment there has been the pitch. I think they seem to suggest, without going into too much detail, that it's made of the same sort of material as the City Ground pitch now. So I think that's that composite grass and polymer sort of woven into it to keep it sort of greener and stronger during the winter months. And that is a significant investment. I mean, I think it's well into hundreds of thousands of pounds just to do that. So fair play to the club. They've really given the players no excuses now to not shine on the pitch. They've got every possible facility, every sort of just saw the sort of analytical screens and everything like that. It's a far cry from Billy Davies having his own editing suite at home, having to bring in videos or DVDs to show the players. It's very professional
with his notebooks written in Comic Sans.
Yeah, well, you've educated me there. I didn't know that, but I like Comic Sans. It's fun, isn't it? Everybody likes a bit of fun anyway. But it's good. It's good. There's, I mean, for all that money that comes into the club, it's good to see that some of it is sticking and not going straight through the donut hole that is the playing squad into their wages every week. And we're actually building something significant and a bit of a legacy. Say, even if we ever end up getting relegated or anything, at least we've got something to show for it now. Yeah,
it's a long-term investment, isn't it? And it's those kind of facilities which will actually help to attract players from other clubs who will come into Forest and be impressed with what's on offer there at the training ground and what they'll be working on day to day. And yes, Rich mentioned about conspiracy theories, suggesting it was a response to some comments that were made on a Forest fans vidcast. I mean, if you look at it objectively, it just looks like a sound and solid investment from Evangelos Marinakis into upgrading the club's facilities and just making Forest a Premier League outfit in so many different ways. And we hope now that the City Ground will follow suit and a similar upgrade will be taking place and positive messages coming out of the club there. Let's now hear another perspective on this, and it comes from our very own Tom Newton.
So like most of us who saw the video earlier in the week of the really encouraging training ground developments, I think we need to be really appreciative of Mr. Marinakis and the money he putting in to progress this football club in terms of facilities and the infrastructure. Things like this don't take 2 minutes to do. They take a lot of planning, etc. And there's been a lot of criticism from a certain minority of supporters who's saying, these facilities, what he's providing at the training ground, are only temporary. You've got to remember this, is that we had nearly 30 years outside the Premier League and not much investment was made in regards to infrastructure. You had Nigel Dowd who put the money in to keep the club ticking over, but it probably needed further investment to keep us on par with certain clubs in the area. Then obviously he sadly passed away. Then you had Fawaz come in, and his legacy was disastrous really, and what he left was 2 screens really, and he just didn't get what levels of investment were needed for this football club.
I think one of the key points that Tom made there, and something I want to pick up on, is that Forest now have facilities that do compete with other Premier League teams and teams nearby in the geographical area. I think chiefly of Leicester, Derby to a certain degree, but I think Leicester's the big one because of all the investment that they've put into their training facilities to obviously not just upgrade them but build a whole new complex entirely. And it's little things like this Maradona that make Forest a more attractive club for senior players coming in, but also youngsters coming through the academies, and where they might have been tempted by the big facilities 30 miles away in Leicester. I think it's showing that Forest do mean business and they want to get their own house in order and put these facilities out there that are going to attract really good players.
Yeah, it's a competitive world in terms of recruitment, especially in the youth ranks. The biggest teams tend to get the best players. and that's partly because of the prestige of their name, but also because they can offer them facilities sort of superior to a lot of other clubs. But yeah, it's all you're part of the rat race basically as a football club. You have to continually invest and get better. Otherwise, if you don't, you stand still and you move backwards. Well, I mean, when I was a kid, I used to go down and actually train on the same pitches as the Forest first team. I was there on occasions when the Frank Clark team was sort of there, and I remember the old Trent Pool indoor pitch. It was a very, very, very cold and basic sort of five-a-side pitch with a bit of AstroTurf inside it, and a basically built with a warehouse roof over it. And to see the facilities now where they've moved on from, it's really astonishing. But that's progress. That life goes on, and if you're looking to be one of the best clubs in the country, which Forest clearly are, they need these things, and it's only right that they've invested and have improved the training ground.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Welcome back to this week's Friday 5. It's Stephen here, and I'm still joined by the Maradona of the Midlands. And our next story, even though no men's football took place this week at Forest because of the international break, there was a big game for the women's team as 2 late goals from Charlie Wellings, one of them a stoppage time penalty, saw Forest beat local rivals Derby 2-1 away from home. And what can I say, Maradona? At all levels, Forest beat Derby. It's as simple as that.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. Yes, it's nice, to be the old local rivals. It's be it women's football or men's football, and they're having a cracking season, aren't they? They're really going places this season, and promotion looks really, really on this season. I mean, there were still a couple of divisions to go up to the WSL, but steady progress being made again, as we say, with the training ground, and always good to get one over Derby.
Positive news all round, definitely. Now back to the men's team, and as we know, it's been International Week, and 11 Forest players were called up to represent their countries at various levels. One of the standouts was Elliot Anderson. He scored for the England under-21s in a standout performance as they beat Azerbaijan 7-0 at Ashton Gate. He scored the 5th goal of the night, put in a really good performance that saw him receive the Player of the Match award on the night in Bristol. And elsewhere, Nikola Milenkovic, he played the full 90 minutes as Serbia lost 3-0 to European champions Spain. Ramon Sosa played 45 minutes as Paraguay beat Venezuela in World Cup qualifying. And Eric da Silva Moreira, he played a couple of minutes for Germany's under-19s as they beat Norway 2-0. So great news for Elliot Anderson, and it looks like he wants to, in the long term, break into the senior England team, and there's no better way of doing that, Maradona, than getting into the under-21s, playing well and making your name there, because as we've seen over the last couple of years, there's that real line of progression from the under-21s, well, through the younger age groups still before that, and right the way through to the England senior team.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a long way off at the England call-up at the moment. There's a lot of players in that sort of position already there. So I think that's a very long-term ambition. But yeah, I'm sure that's what he's thinking. And that's what part of the reason why he came to Forest was so he could get minutes and get into the spotlight. And having seen Morgan Gibbs-White make his England debut now, the pathway is there. He's got a shining example. If you can see it, you can believe it, as they say these days. So I'm sure his long-term ambition is that, and his performances so far this season, barring one against Fulham, which he and everybody else had a bit of a dog, all go well for his progression. And nice for him to get a goal, even if it was just against Azerbaijan. But well done to him.
And one of the more interesting stories of the week, involved the Nigeria squad. We saw these pictures come out during the week of all of them sat on the floor of an airport. Not really sure what was going on. I saw things saying that the players had been taken hostage and God knows what else. But what the story was that they had decided not to play their fixture in Libya after their flight was diverted, and the squad ended up locked in an airport terminal at Al Abrak Airport, some 200 miles away from the ground. I just hope they've got out and they're coming back safely, because we've got Taiwo and Ola Aina involved in that, and it was a bit of a strange sight, wasn't it? To see players sat in an airport and not playing football.
Yeah, I mean, it was next level housery, wasn't it? To get the old air traffic control involved and possibly the airport and the military, just to delay their flights and have them hanging around in the middle of nowhere. It's another level. I think the Libyans are apparently upset because they felt they'd been treated badly in the return fixture in Nigeria. The Nigerian FA is protesting that it was all accidental. It wasn't on purpose. But the Libyans, you don't want to cross a Libyan, Stephen. They don't forget, and they were not happy, and they wanted to get their revenge, seemingly, for it. And it's the Nigerian players in the end said, "Well, we're not playing." They saw straight through it, apparently, and hopefully they're back home safely now. A bit of a waste of time for everybody, a bit of a waste of energy. But yeah, I'm guessing this story will rumble on and on. I just hope if they were doing something underhand that they get punished for it. And it's not Nigeria. The way that football authorities seem to work a lot of the times is they punish the victim rather than the perpetrator. So,
right.
Yeah. So, hopefully Nigeria don't get into too much trouble for it. But yeah, it's a funny one. It just shows it's a big wide world of football out there, and not everything's as slick and polished as the Premier League.
And to wrap things up, a couple of extra stories on this week's Friday Five. So, Forest B team lost 1-0 to a late goal from Valencia's under-21s in the Premier League International Cup, despite a strong performance. Forest Netball have appointed Andrew Butterworth as head of performance and performance analysis as the netball team begin to establish themselves and start to grow and develop. But finally, there have been a number of fixture changes for the first team as our old friends, the TV companies, get involved again. So games in December against Manchester City and Manchester United are on the box. So the date for the trip to Man City stays the same. That's Wednesday, 4th of December. But it will now kick off at an earlier time of 7:30 p.m. because that's going to be on Amazon Prime Live. 3 days later, Forest are back in Manchester to face United on Saturday the 7th. The kick-off now been moved for that one to 5:30 after being selected for Sky Sports coverage. The Aston Villa game at home the following week has also been moved to 5:30 because of Sky Sports coverage. The Boxing Day clash against Spurs is a 3 p.m. kickoff, but that's going to now be shown live on Amazon Prime. Can you keep up with me at this rate? Because there's more. The following month, the Wolves game has now moved. That's going to be 2 days later on Monday, the 6th of January. That's going to be live on Sky Sports at 8 p.m. Liverpool's also been selected for live coverage. That's the home game. That's going to be on TNT Sports on the 14th of January at 8 p.m. And then the final change of winter sees the Southampton game moved a day later to Sunday, the 19th of January, kick-off at 2 p.m. This is because Manchester United versus Southampton is now taking place on Thursday, the 16th of January. So we've got a few new dates for the diary, a few new kick-off times as these fixtures are rearranged for TV. I mean, it's all part of being in the Premier League, isn't it? We know this stuff happens, but every now and again, I just think, can we just have some more games at 3 p.m. on a Saturday, please? Everybody knows where they are at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. Yeah,
I mean, the glib answer is you take the TV company's coin and you have to do what they say, you have to dance to their tune. They pumped in billions of pounds now over the years, and that's seen us in England sort of get the best players in the world, some of the finest stadiums, lovely new training grounds with baristas and what have you. But the losers are the match-going fans. They're the ones who have a poorer experience because they're having to go at strange times, strange days. Their whole routine for the day is ruined. The 5:30 p.m. kickoffs are just so annoying. It's just you're not one way or the other. It ruins your whole sort of afternoon and evening. You can't really do one thing or the other, and it's just we've benefited from all that money in terms of improving the quality of players and everything. But I don't know if it's as enjoyable as it was when the players weren't that good and they weren't that fit. They made more mistakes. And we could just go on 3:00 in the afternoon and on a Saturday and just enjoy it for a reasonable price. It's the price of progress, but progress doesn't necessarily make things better sometimes. So if not a lot we can do. Is the genie is out of the bottle. So we just have to lump it, I guess, in this country. We're not very good at getting organised and protesting against these things and demanding from the clubs and the FAs and the TV companies that it shouldn't be like this. I always like to use the example of German football, where these sort of things do happen, where they do protest often and stop certain changes. But we're just not like that in England, are we?
We're not, but that is a very different conversation for a different podcast. So we will leave it there. That was this week's Friday 5. My thanks to Rich Ferraro for providing this week's stories. Thanks as well to the Maradona of the Midlands for joining me. And thank you as well, listener, for coming along and listening to us. We will be back with you with our match report after Forest's game against Crystal Palace, which also was moved for TV coverage to Monday night. We will be back in your feeds after that with our match report. We'll see you soon.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.